He kicked out his pregnant wife for a slay queen, unaware she secretly inherited $99 million without him knowing. Betrayed but unstoppable, she rises in power, leaving him in shock. Will he ever realize what he lost, and how far will she go for revenge? Are you ready to see her rise? Let's dive into the story and find the truth.
In the heart of a bustling African town, life moved with its usual rhythm. Children laughing in the dusty streets, vendors calling out their wares, and neighbors exchanging the latest gossip. Yet for 26-year-old Amara, none of this ordinary life mattered anymore. She had once believed she had everything she could ever want: a loving husband, Tunde, a man she had trusted with all her heart, and the joyous anticipation of their first child. She had envisioned long evenings together, quiet walks under the fading African sun, and the gentle, comforting presence of family around her. Every plan she had made, every dream she had cherished, seemed secure, and she carried herself with a quiet contentment that came from believing that life was unfolding just as it should. But that fragile peace shattered in an instant. Tunde, the man she had vowed to spend her life with, had been seduced, not by love, but by the glittering allure of wealth, status, and the flashy lifestyle of a young, seductive slay queen named Abiola. Her presence was everywhere in the town's whispers, a vision of glamour, charm, and boldness that seemed to pull Tunde away from everything that truly mattered.
Amara had noticed subtle changes at first, the way Tunde's eyes lingered on things she could never compete with, the late nights out that became more frequent, the sudden secrecy over messages and phone calls. But she had hoped it was nothing, that love would prevail, that her bond with Tunde was stronger than mere fascination. She could not have imagined the magnitude of what was about to happen. On one stormy evening, when the sky unleashed its fury with rain slashing through the streets and lightning illuminating the dark clouds, Tunde's betrayal became undeniable. With harsh words that cut deeper than any blade, he kicked Amara out of their home, leaving her trembling in the cold wind, soaked to the skin, carrying the weight of both her physical exhaustion and emotional devastation. Neighbors peered from behind cracked doors and shuttered windows, whispering with sympathetic horror, but no one dared intervene. Amara's tears fell silently, tracing paths down her cheeks as she struggled to maintain composure. Yet within her, beneath the layers of despair and heartbreak, a quiet resolve began to burn. A determination she had never fully recognized in herself until that very moment. She clutched the small bundle of belongings she could carry, feeling the emptiness of the home she had once called safe, and the betrayal of the man she had trusted most. Every step into the storm felt like a descent into a world that no longer held mercy for her. Yet her mind raced with questions, with fragments of memories of their life together, and a spark of defiance began to kindle. It was in this moment, amidst the relentless rain and the chorus of distant thunder, that fate intervened in a way Amara could not have foreseen. As she stumbled through the shadowed streets, her eyes catching every flicker of light and shadow, she noticed something unusual near the entrance of an alleyway. A small envelope, neatly placed, with her name written on it in elegant handwriting. The letter seemed almost to glow faintly under the dim streetlights, as if insisting that she notice it, that she take it despite her exhaustion and fear. With trembling hands, she picked it up and felt the weight of possibilities pressing upon her. Who could have left this letter? Why here, in the dark, unforgiving streets, where danger could easily lurk behind every corner? And yet, she sensed that whatever lay inside might be the first clue to reclaiming control over a life that had been violently torn from her grasp. Her heart pounded as she carefully broke the seal, the sound of rain mingling with the echoes of her own thoughts, and she began to read the words penned by a lawyer she had never met, words that hinted at secrets,
inheritance, and a fortune that could change everything she had believed about her place in the world. The storm raged on around her, but inside, amidst the fear and the heartbreak, a new kind of electricity filled her veins. The electricity of hope, of mystery, and of a future she had never dared to imagine. Amara stood there, rain-drenched, heart racing, realizing that this unexpected letter was the beginning of a journey that would test her strength, challenge her spirit, and unveil truths that would alter her life forever. And as she looked down at the envelope once more, the questions formed in her mind like lightning in the dark sky. What secrets were waiting for her? What power did she now hold without even realizing it? And most importantly, what would happen next in a world that had betrayed her so completely? The moment Amara carefully unfolded the letter in the quiet corner of the rain-soaked street, her eyes widened with disbelief, her heart pounding so fast she feared it might burst from her chest. The words on the paper revealed something she could never have imagined. She was the secret heir to her late grandmother's immense fortune, a staggering $99 million hidden away from the world. For years, her family had guarded this secret fiercely, aware of the dangerous temptations such a fortune could present. Greedy relatives and opportunists lurked in every shadow, eager to claim what was not rightfully theirs, and so the truth had been carefully concealed until the right moment. Amara's mind spun with the enormity of what she had just learned. $99 million. Wealth so unimaginable that it could transform not just her life, but the fate of her unborn child. Shock battled with disbelief, yet beneath the overwhelming surprise, a spark of determination ignited. She realized that this revelation was not merely about money, it was about survival, protection, and reclaiming the dignity that Tunde had carelessly tried to strip from her. Despite the fear that gnawed at her, Amara understood she had to act swiftly and wisely. Every step she took now could shape a future that no one had dared to predict. With a resolve that belied her tender age and the fragility of her circumstances, she sought a safe place to begin anew. She rented a modest, unassuming house on the outskirts of the town, where the sun's morning light would peek through simple curtains and offer the first warmth of a new chapter. Here, she began quietly building a life that balanced secrecy with opportunity, moving through the days as though invisible, all the while carrying the invisible weight of a fortune that could change everything. She took small steps, carefully researching investments, learning the art of financial strategy, and observing the town's economic rhythms from a safe distance, making every decision with the foresight of a mother who would do anything to protect her child. Tunde, meanwhile, remained blissfully ignorant of the treasure he had abandoned, of the immense fortune that now rested in the hands of the woman he had discarded so thoughtlessly. He continued his life with Abiola, basking in superficial glamour and fleeting pleasures, completely unaware that Amara, whom he had underestimated and betrayed, was quietly plotting a future where she would rise far above the reach of his arrogance and folly. Day by day, Amara transformed not only her surroundings, but also herself. She moved through the town with a quiet confidence, her steps measured, her gaze keen, learning to navigate the subtleties of power, wealth, and respect. She became a master of discretion, a shadow in plain sight, while simultaneously planting the seeds of influence that would one day ensure she could claim what was hers and more. And yet, despite her meticulous planning and careful secrecy, life had its own way of testing her patience and resolve. One evening, as the golden sun dipped behind the hills and the market square buzzed with vendors calling out their wares, Amara walked among the crowds, observing, listening, and absorbing the rhythms of everyday life. She moved with purpose, her presence unnoticed, blending seamlessly with the throngs of people, her mind occupied with thoughts of strategy and survival. It was then that she overheard a voice she had not expected to hear, a voice so familiar that it sent a shiver down her spine. Tunde was there, loudly boasting about Abiola. His gestures animated, his pride blinding him to everything else.
He spoke as though the world revolved around the pair of them, completely unaware that the woman he had scorned, abandoned, and humiliated was now walking among the crowd, destined for unimaginable wealth that would soon eclipse everything he thought he knew about power, success, and consequence. The realization settled in Amara's chest like a weight and a thrill all at once. Here he was, oblivious, and yet unknowingly, fate had already tilted the scales in her favor. The market's noise, the chatter of neighbors, the calls of street vendors, all seemed to fade as Amara's mind raced with possibilities. She envisioned a life where justice would be quietly but irrevocably served, where her unborn child would grow up in security, and where the man who had betrayed her would finally understand the magnitude of what he had thrown away. And as she continued to listen, blending into the crowd, her heart swelled with both anticipation and a quiet, simmering resolve, knowing that the moment of reckoning, though still unseen, was drawing ever closer, and that every step she had taken, every careful plan she had laid, was leading to a destiny that no one, not even Tunde, could now avoid.
Amara had begun to reshape not only her own destiny, but the very fabric of the town around her, moving with a quiet purpose that few noticed, but all would eventually feel the impact of. She invested carefully in local businesses, small shops, and agricultural ventures, learning the subtle rhythms of commerce and the delicate art of managing wealth with intelligence and foresight. Every decision she made was deliberate, calculated, and yet infused with a generosity that endeared her to the people around her. Community projects, from funding schools to supporting orphanages, became her way of weaving herself into the town's heart without revealing her true identity. Word of her elegance, wisdom, and unshakable resilience began to circulate quietly, whispered in markets, in the shade of roadside cafes, and during evening gatherings under the sprawling baobab trees. Though no one could yet link the growing legend to the woman they once knew as the abandoned pregnant Amara, the aura she carried demanded respect and attention, a respect she earned not through spectacle, but through action and integrity. She had become a living testament to the power of endurance, intelligence, and grace, a woman who had transformed heartbreak into opportunity and secrecy into influence.
Meanwhile, Tunde's life with Abiola grew increasingly complicated, though he failed to recognize the storm that was already forming beyond his view. Abiola, glamorous and seductive on the surface, was cunning and manipulative, her motives veiled beneath a facade of charm and sophistication. Tunde, initially blinded by the glitter and excitement she offered, began to notice cracks in the illusion. Disagreements that were once minor erupted into conflicts, ambitions clashed, and the superficial happiness he had chased seemed hollow and fleeting. The nights once filled with laughter now carried whispers of tension, disappointment, and unease. Yet he remained oblivious to the fact that his former wife, the woman he had cruelly discarded, had quietly taken control of a fortune and influence that would soon eclipse everything he thought he understood about success, power, and consequence. Amara, ever watchful, observed him from a distance, noting his struggles with a calm patience. She allowed him the illusion of freedom and the indulgence of his own arrogance, knowing that the time for confrontation and revelation would come when the stage was perfectly set. She had learned that true power was not in confrontation alone, but in strategy, patience, and timing. Every meeting she attended, every handshake she gave, every investment she made was a calculated step toward reclaiming what had been unjustly taken from her and securing a future that would protect her child and honor her own strength. And then came the evening of the charity gala, a glittering affair where the town's elite gathered under crystal chandeliers and warm golden lights, celebrating philanthropy, progress, and prestige. Amara entered, understated yet commanding, dressed with elegance that drew eyes without demanding attention. Tunde, unaware of the woman now standing in the room, mingled with guests, boasting of Abiola's beauty and their supposed accomplishments, never suspecting that the very woman he had forsaken was present, observing every detail with quiet, calculating precision. It was in a brief, almost fleeting moment, amidst the bustle of the gala, that Tunde extended his hand in greeting, and without a hint of recognition, shook hands with Amara. Their eyes met for just an instant, a glance so loaded with unspoken history, pain, and transformation that it could have cracked the walls around any heart. Amara's gaze was calm, almost serene, yet beneath that composed exterior simmered the revelation of power, wealth, and destiny that Tunde could never have anticipated. The room continued in its celebration around them, yet for those few seconds, the universe seemed to hold its breath, the weight of untold secrets pressing silently on the air. The seed she had planted over months, the careful cultivation of her influence, and the mastery of her fortune had all led to this precise moment, and Amara knew that the story of betrayal, resilience, and transformation was only just beginning to unfold. As their brief handshake ended, and Tunde moved on, laughing with ignorance and pride, a subtle, almost imperceptible smile touched Amara's lips, hinting at the vast, unseen power she now held and the reckoning that was silently, inevitably approaching, ready to rewrite the course of lives, fortunes, and destinies alike. After months of careful planning and quiet preparation, Amara knew the time had come to reclaim the justice and dignity that had been stolen from her. She had spent her days not only building her fortune, but also observing, learning, and anticipating every move that Tunde and Abiola might make. She understood their ambitions, their weaknesses, and the arrogance that had blinded them to the possibility that she, the woman they had dismissed and underestimated, could ever rise above her circumstances. With a quiet determination and a strategy honed to perfection, she began her final move. Using the influence and wealth she had meticulously accumulated, Amara began purchasing shares in the company that Tunde and Abiola had long dreamed of taking over. Every transaction was calculated, every acquisition silent, ensuring that no one suspected the quiet force gathering behind the scenes. By the time the company's annual board meeting arrived, Amara had secured a controlling interest, an invisible hand guiding the fate of a company they believed they could dominate. The room was filled with the usual murmurs of anticipation and subtle power plays. Executives seated around the polished table, unaware that the balance of power was about to shift dramatically. When Amara entered the boardroom, her presence was understated yet commanding, a quiet elegance that demanded attention without demanding it. Eyes turned instinctively, though no one knew why they felt the weight of authority emanating from her. Tunde and Abiola, seated at the head of the table, were already discussing expansion plans, investments, and acquisitions, confident in their control over the company and blind to the truth that was about to strike them with devastating clarity. Then, in the midst of their confident discourse, the chairman, with a steady voice that carried across the polished oak table, announced the unexpected. Amara's name was now the majority shareholder. The words hung in the air like a sudden clap of thunder, silencing conversations, freezing gestures mid-motion, and halting the confident plans of those who had assumed total control. Tunde's face turned pale, disbelief flickering in his eyes, while Abiola's glamorous mask of composure wavered as the reality of Amara's presence and power sank in. Amara did not speak immediately. She did not need to. Her confidence, her calm, and the subtle, almost imperceptible smile that curved her lips were enough to convey her dominance and the inevitability of what had just occurred. The boardroom, filled with executives who had never imagined such a twist, remained in stunned silence, the tension so palpable it seemed to thicken the air itself. Tunde, seated rigidly, tried to gather his thoughts, but the magnitude of the situation struck him like a blow. Every misstep he had made, every assumption about Amara's weakness now seemed grotesquely obvious. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that he had seriously underestimated the woman he had once discarded, and that his arrogance and lust had blinded him to a power far greater than he could have anticipated. Abiola, once so certain of her influence, now looked to Tunde,
searching for answers, but finding none. The quiet smile on Amara's face spoke volumes. She had won this round without raising her voice, without making threats, using only the subtle force of strategy, patience, and intelligence. And yet, even as Tunde struggled to comprehend the shift, even as Abiola's disbelief grew, Amara knew that this revelation was only part of her carefully orchestrated plan. One final move, one last decisive action remained, a move that would ensure the scales of justice were not only balanced, but tipped irrevocably in her favor. The boardroom, still echoing with the shock of her sudden dominance, seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the next act of this unfolding drama. Tunde's lips parted, but no words came. His mind raced through possibilities, strategies, and excuses, yet nothing could undo the reality he now faced. Amara's calm composure, the subtle glint of determination in her eyes, and the quiet authority she radiated were far more powerful than any verbal confrontation could have been. She had transformed from the abandoned, underestimated wife into a force that could shape destinies, command respect, and enact justice with precision. The stage was set, the players positioned, and the moment of ultimate reckoning was imminent. Tunde, still reeling, could not yet imagine the final blow, the last revelation that would seal the story in a way that no one, not even him, could have anticipated. As Amara quietly observed the room, noting every expression, every flicker of realization, she understood that patience, strategy, and unwavering resolve had brought her to the brink of triumph. And as the tension hung thickly in the air, she allowed herself a brief, almost imperceptible smile, knowing that the culmination of months of planning, resilience, and quiet strength was about to unfold, and that Tunde, who had once held all the power, was now powerless to stop the inevitable conclusion of a story he had foolishly thought he controlled.
The moment had finally arrived. A culmination of months of careful planning, patience, and quiet determination. In the grand boardroom, where power and ambition had once seemed to belong solely to Tunde and Abiola, Amara stood as the undeniable force that had reshaped the very landscape of influence and control. With poise and elegance, she revealed not only her identity, but the full extent of her fortune, the staggering $99 million that she had inherited in secret. A fortune that had been carefully safeguarded and nurtured to serve both her vision and her future. Every eye in the room widened as the truth settled like a heavy, inescapable presence. Whispers cascaded through the room, echoing off polished walls, and Tunde, seated rigidly at the head of the table, felt the full weight of his misjudgment pressed down upon him. He had believed himself clever, triumphant, and in control. Yet in the single, deliberate revelation, the reality of his arrogance and short-sightedness was made painfully clear. Abiola, glamorous and cunning, who had once seemed untouchable and dominant, was now reduced to a mixture of fury, disbelief, and frustration, unable to comprehend how the woman she had dismissed and scorned had so thoroughly mastered the art of triumph and justice. Amara, however, did not gloat, did not allow her victory to be sullied by anger or vindictiveness. Her calm determination radiated quietly, a strength that silenced even the most confident voices in the room. She announced, with measured words that carried authority and grace, that a significant portion of her fortune would be allocated to community projects, schools, and orphanages, ensuring that the power she now wielded would serve not only herself, but the wider town, those who had supported her quietly or suffered in obscurity. Her generosity, balanced with strategic precision, earned her the respect of everyone present, a respect that Tunde had never commanded, a respect that no amount of wealth or charm could have secured for Abiola. As the reality of Amara's triumph settled over the boardroom, Tunde's world began to crumble. Every plan he had once envisioned with Abiola, every assumption he had made about Amara's weakness, every act of betrayal and dismissiveness, all were now exposed as foolishness, as the folly of a man blinded by desire and pride. He could barely speak,
The words lodged in his throat, the confidence he had once carried now shattered, replaced with the cold realization that he had been entirely outmaneuvered. Amara's calm composure contrasted sharply with the chaos in Tunde's mind and Abiola's rising anger. And in that contrast lay the ultimate proof of her power. With her child safely by her side, Amara embodied a victory that was as much moral and emotional as it was financial. She had transformed betrayal, humiliation, and loss into a narrative of triumph and empowerment. The town would remember this moment, not for scandal or revenge, but for the quiet, resolute intelligence of a woman who had endured, who had strategized, and who had acted with patience and courage to reclaim what was rightfully hers. And yet, even in this moment of public vindication, there remained subtle, almost imperceptible tension, the final element of suspense that made the story unforgettable. As Tunde rose, devastated and defeated, leaving the room with the weight of his mistakes pressing upon him, Amara watched silently, her gaze steady, her expression calm yet undeniably knowing. In the quiet after the departure of the man who had once held all the power over her life, she whispered to herself, a soft murmur that carried both reflection and quiet triumph. Some lessons are learned the hard way, and some fortunes are earned the quiet way. These words, though only spoken to herself, resonated through the invisible corridors of justice, patience, and destiny, encapsulating the full journey from betrayal to empowerment, from loss to reclamation, from despair to triumph. In that single moment, Amara had not only reshaped her own destiny, but had demonstrated a timeless truth to the world around her, that true strength lies not in aggression or immediate gratification, but in wisdom, patience, and the courage to act decisively when the time is right.
This time I'm making a video for you guys. I hope you enjoy my video. If you enjoy my video, please share with your family and friend. If you enjoy my video, please like. If you like my video, I make more videos for you. I hope you enjoy this video a lot. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and share with your family, friends, and family members, because I make moral stories for everyone. I hope you understand my language.